Well, President Obama may have won a second term, but there are new questions about whether he may be the biggest obstacle to Democrats retaking the House in 2014, which is said to be the president's goal. Some Democrats in the districts which could determine the party that controls the House say the issues the president has made his top priorities in this term are creating serious political problems for them. Joining me now, Leslie Marshall. She's a syndicated radio talk show host and a Fox News contributor, and Chris Plante, who is host of the Chris Plante Show. We have heard so much since the president was inaugurated the second time around about how his goal really is to retake control of that House, the Democrats, in 2014, and therefore the Democrats would control the House, the Senate, and the White House, and he could push through his agenda. And yet now it is emerging more and more in the press that the concerns of those who are actually the Democrats who would have to do it, who would have to run in these, right now, Republican districts, is not so much about their Republican counterparts, but about him, about their Democratic president, Chris. Can you explain?
Well, the president is the leader of the Democratic Party. It's if you live in one of these districts, first of all, they're Republican districts that they need to win back. So the president and the Democrats are already at something of a disadvantage. You've also got the president at the hub of the wheel in Washington, and Washington is completely and utterly dysfunctional. And if you live in one of these Democratic districts, what you're voting for is one-party rule in Washington. Now, that might help to break the gridlock, but it could also, one-party rule. We saw what happened in the first 2 years of President Obama's term in his first term in office with Obamacare and running roughshod over the Republicans. I don't think people want to see one-party rule in Washington. In Republican districts, it's going to be hard to get a Democrat to beat a Republican, particularly when the voters know that they're handing everything over to President Obama and his agenda.
You know, Leslie, to win control of the House, again, because we've heard this is the president's goal, this is what he really wants. But for the Democrats to win control of the House in 2014, they would have to have a net gain of 17 seats. And all of their battles, virtually all of their battles, are going to be in Republican-controlled districts or districts that Mitt Romney won. When they did that in 2006, there was an unpopular Republican president in the White House against whom they could run. It is a very different situation this time around.
It's a very different situation, but on many levels. I mean, one, some of these districts are very conservative, and quite frankly, I don't know if the president will get his wish, but I certainly know Democrats will pick up seats, as they actually did in the last election, even though Republicans maintained control of the House. And part of that is the literal changing face of the voter, even in some of these districts. Women, Latinos, African Americans weighing much more heavily into the vote. And Chris, when you mention things like the Affordable Care Act, you have two very outspoken against Affordable Care Act now embracing that, and those are Governors Chris Christie in New Jersey and Rick Scott in Florida. So quite frankly, I don't think we can, and I don't believe and agree with Democrats blaming the president. I think Democrats actually have a very good position because right now the Republican Party is lacking leadership. It's extremely fragmented and very confused on what its image should be to be able to obtain the new demographics of the voting public based on the outcome of the last election.
What are the issues that they are concerned about, Chris? Because I've heard gun control mentioned, and obviously the president wants gun control, and that's a dicey issue because, the American people are divided on many of the proposed measures. Okay, I get that one. But they also mentioned immigration and gay marriage. Well, there's, more than we've seen in years, support right now on both sides of the aisle for immigration reform, and the support for gay marriage is building and building. So how are those going to be the deciding and most divisive issues?
Well, I mean, I think that's going to be a district by district, region by region, state by state issue. Florida and governors accepting, after arm twisting, what Obamacare mandates, I don't think is necessarily going to be a huge issue for voters in congressional races. But you've got a situation where the president is losing ground right now. His poll numbers are headed in the wrong direction if you're the White House. And you're going to see, in all probability, because of the gridlock in Washington and the total dysfunction, a president who is going to become increasingly unpopular between now and Election Day. Now, Leslie, you said that you think that the Democrats will pick up seats in the midterms. A little premature to make predictions like that, I think. The Democrats are planning on picking up seats. That doesn't mean they're going to. A lot's going to happen between now and then. And the president's not going to be gaining ground as we go forward, as polarized as the issues are and as polarizing as they're making the debates. a lot of Americans are still not with the president and certainly not with one-party rule. And eventually people are going to hold Barack Obama, the president of the United States, responsible to at least some extent for the dysfunction in Washington. He's blamed the Bush administration for the first 4 years. That's not going to hold for the next 2 and 4 years.
On that front, the president has recently begun his outreach, Leslie, to Republicans. And, you know, I mean, it's been 5 years, and now he's starting to reach across the aisle. His supporters at the White House want us to believe this has been happening for 5 years, but it hasn't. It hasn't. They don't get along. They don't like each other. Republicans don't like him, and he doesn't like them. But now he's trying because, well, I don't know why he's trying. I'll leave that up to the viewers. But his poll numbers are falling. They're falling. And we did a segment about that at the beginning of the show. They're down at 45% in the latest poll, a record low since November 2011. And his disapproval rating now, for the first time, is higher than his approval rating. Even his personal likability ratings are going down. So he needs to reverse that for him to have, you know, the goodwill to convince people to throw the bums out, as they say, and put Democrats in, which is what he wants.
Well, I think he can do that. I mean, certainly we know, you know, looking at polls, whether it's a presidential election, we also know that presidents have a harder time being as popular unless there's some huge event in their presidency in the second term. Chris, I think it's funny how your crystal ball about the president and his approval ratings keep going down is accurate, but my crystal ball about Democrats gaining seats in the House is a bit premature. Maybe we're both being clairvoyant here. So let me take my crystal ball and be clairvoyant. The president also sees that this poll shows that Americans dislike Congress more than him, and they dislike Republicans more than Democrats. And they also blame still Republicans for the sequester and the failures, and would have if we had fallen off the fiscal cliff. So the president, and I agree with you, Megan, he should have reached out earlier. I totally agree with that. But he sees, and I'm even seeing those left and right talking about, we got to get stuff done. And that's who's going to get thrown out, are people that are unwilling to work at some level together to compromise to get things done for the good of the American people. Because the congressional numbers, approval ratings, are certainly more frightening and worrisome, I think, as a voter than the president.
Yeah, the approval ratings are just really dreadful for Congress, as they have been really forever. I mean, they never get good approval ratings, and the latest in this poll are not good either. I don't have it in front of me, but they're bad. Trust me when I tell you that. Oh, here it is. Congressional Republicans, 26% approve of them, and it's like 34% for the Democrats. Anyway, the numbers are dreadful. We'll leave it at that. Thank you both so much.
Thanks, you, Megan.